footprints that defy explanation, disappearing orbs in the sky, and a real spellbook for wizards. Here are some of the craziest discoveries ever made that scientists can't explain, but we're gonna try. Let's start with the weird QR code on the beach. The beach QR code. Something really unusual was found on an Australian beach in 2020, and the mystery has never been solved. There are pictures of the weird, washed-up artifact, but nobody knows what happened to it or what it even was. As far as the story goes, the strange object was found partially buried beneath the sandy beach. It was about 4 feet long and was made out of metal. The artifact was also bound in some places with rope. People called it a piece of alien technology. There were rumors that the object was an ancient weapon from an unknown civilization. Honestly, describing its features is tough because the object looks so weird. At one end, it appeared to be a glass bulb, with its metallic edges crusty from the sea, and inside the glass bulb it looks like there's a QR code. Unfortunately, that's really all the information I have right now. Maybe it was some debris from outer space, or a part for some ship? Do you know what it is or have any guesses? Let me know in the comments. And now it's shout-out time. I want to give a big thank you to Brandon Hewitt, who is a longtime subscriber. Hi, Brandon. And Stephen Burchett. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join the family. The oldest runestone. In Norway, archaeologists have found what they say is the oldest runestone in the world. It dates back 2,000 years, likely to the very beginning of runic writing. But what does it say, and what does it mean? The runestone isn't anything epic to look at. It's a flat block of sandstone with some faint scribbles on it. But according to the Museum of Cultural History in Oslo, the scribbles could be the earliest runic inscription ever discovered. Not only that, but Crystal Zilmer from the University of Oslo says that the stone could be one of the first attempts to use runes. As you likely already know, runes are closely associated with the Vikings. But this runestone was carved roughly 1,000 years before the Viking Age even began. It was excavated from a grave near Oslo in 2021. It took researchers a long time to analyze and date the mysterious hunk of sandstone. It also took a while to figure out what the runes say. Not all the inscriptions make linguistic sense. 8 of the runes seem to say Idiberug, which could be the name of somebody or perhaps an ancient word for iceberg. Unfortunately, though, the mystery won't be solved until the runes are properly deciphered. Mexico's missing island. Off the northwest coast of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula is the tiny, uninhabited island of Bermeja, or at least it used to be there. The mysterious island was discovered in the early 16th century and is currently nowhere to be found. The entire island vanished, and people want to know where it is. 500 years ago, Bermeja was a known geological feature. The Spanish explorers who arrived in the Gulf of Mexico identified the island and added it to all the maps that they drew. It was a common fixture for centuries on maps of the New World. But then, in the 18th century, it slowly stopped being added to maps, with Bermeja making its final appearance in 1921. So where in the world did this island go? There are a lot of theories, and each one is crazier than the last. Some say it was blown up by the CIA, but others believe it was shaken into rubble by an underwater earthquake. A more reasonable explanation is that the island was submerged by rising sea levels. Then again, it may have never existed at all. In 1997, the Mexican government sent an expedition to find the island of Bermeja. It was a failure, with no sign of the island uncovered. But people just won't give up. There were 3 official investigations in 2009, each one also coming up empty. It seems ridiculous to hunt for the Phantom Island now because clearly it isn't there anymore. But what happened? Where did the island go? People demand answers. The Unknown Girl. One of the more obscure tragedies of the 19th century was the death of a girl with no name. In the late 1880s, a young woman was pulled from Paris's River Seine. She was a mystery to investigators because there were no obvious signs of violence. It was assumed that she may have fallen into the river and drowned, but there was just no way to know, so the young woman became another casualty of the world. But then she got famous. The unidentified woman was so beautiful, even in death, that she mesmerized a pathologist at the Paris morgue. The pathologist even decided to make a death mask of her face to preserve her beauty for all of eternity. He wasn't the only one who fell in love with the young woman's face. The mask became extremely popular, with copies being distributed throughout high society in Paris. She became a pop culture figure known as La Inconnue de la Seine, which in English translates to the unknown girl of the Seine. Books were written about her and paintings were made in her image. There were even movie stars of the silent era who took inspiration from her look. In 1958, people were still obsessed with the mysterious girl found in the river. Her face was chosen to be that of a first aid mannequin in France. The nameless dead woman from almost 150 years ago now has the most kissed face of all time because she is a CPR practice mannequin. Saturn megastorms. Scientists are baffled by terrifying megastorms that are occurring on the surface of a planet that's very far from our own. These storms are so incredible that it's hard to even imagine their fury. If one were to happen on Earth, it would undoubtedly destroy human civilization. I'm talking about the planet of Saturn and more specifically its great white spots. When you look at Saturn through a telescope, you can easily see gigantic white splotches on its northern hemisphere. These erupt every 20 or 30 years and last for hundreds of days at a time. Sometimes the storms are so big that they encompass the whole planet. The first one was spotted in 1876, and in 2010, NASA's Cassini spacecraft got front-row seats as it entered Saturn's orbit. New research is unveiling unexplainable mysteries of the great storms that envelop Saturn. Recent radio telescope scans have shown that megastorms from centuries ago left a lasting imprint in the planet's atmosphere. The storms create chemical anomalies that persist for centuries. Scientists used the Very Large Array Radio Telescope in New Mexico to study Saturn in radio wavelengths. They were hoping to find remnants of the storm in 2010, but instead they found traces of 6 storms dating back 130 years. These storms appear to be leaving layers of ammonia concentrations within the atmosphere. Nobody knows what it means, but scientists are incredibly intrigued. If they can understand what causes epic storms of wind and ammonia hail balls, they'll be a tiny step closer to understanding the biggest storms in the solar system. The Ghost of Jerusalem. Israel Antiquities Authority archaeologist Dr. Hamoudi Khalili has seen some crazy things during his career. And if you've been paying attention, you'll have heard my story about Hamoudi and the disappearing corpse in the Nabatean ruins of Halutza. But today, I want to tell another story about Hamoudi's encounter with a ghost in Jerusalem. In 2012, Dr. Khalili was at the Tomb of David in Israel with an Italian team of scientists. 3D photography was a new technology a decade ago, so the researchers were very excited to use the tech for the first time in Israel, employing a laser beam to capture 200 images per minute. The first place archaeologists wanted to try it was at the supposed tomb of the legendary King David. You remember the guy from the Bible who slayed Goliath with a sling? The interior of the tomb had never been scanned in 3 dimensions. The scientists were going to be creating a precise image of the burial chamber for the first time in history. They arrived and set up the device. Everyone was cleared from the area so that they weren't blinded by the lasers. Then the tests were done and the images were collected by the team. And what they ended up with was a 3D rendering of King David's tomb. But apparently, there was a ghost in it. In the 3D image was a human figure. It didn't have any discernible eyes or facial features, but it had discernible human parts, hands, legs, and a body. The archaeologists thought maybe somebody snuck inside while the machine was on. So they did the test again, ensuring that no one was inside. And again, the ghost appeared in the 3D image. They did the test 3 more times, and surprisingly, the spectral figure showed up in every photograph. What happened next, you're not going to believe. Because the team of researchers included some Italians, the story reached the Vatican. The Pope supposedly ordered all the tapes from the investigation to be confiscated, so they've never been revealed to the public. The Vatican swept the whole thing under the rug. And the only proof that any of this happened is from Dr. Kaleli's testimony. The Wizard's Spellbook. Wizard spellbooks are real. Magical tomes filled with secret knowledge aren't just fantasies from Harry Potter. There is a book called Arbitel de Magia Veterum that's been baffling scholars for years. It's a Latin grimoire and a magical handbook with a twist. Yes, it has powerful spells inside, but it also encourages practitioners of magic to live virtuous and divine lives. It's considered a book of white magic, not like your typical black grimoire with spells for summoning demons. But what is the book and where did it come from? The Arbitel, as it's casually called, appeared in Switzerland in 1575. Nobody knows who wrote it or where they got their spells from. The word Arbitel is a mystery of its own because there is no known translation in any language. One theory came from British scholar A.E. Waite, who suggested that Arbitel is a derivative of the Hebrew word Arbotal, which was the name of a magical angel. Others, however, think that Arbitel may have been the name of the mysterious author. Now let's get into the secrets of the grimoire. I'm going to ask you to suspend your belief in all things science for a little while because, of course, scientists have no explanation for magic, and they dismiss anything magic as total nonsense. But who are scientists who dictate the secrets of this spiritual realm? The book is divided into 7 main sections. There's a brief introduction which discusses the pure magic of the book and its intentions for good. Then the next chapter talks about the connection between God, spirits, and divinity. After that, it dives straight into practical magic. The book tells the reader how to properly use magical words and how to draw magical symbols. It talks about the ingredients for rituals and how to consecrate magical tools. As the book goes on, Chapter 4 discusses celestial magic. This involves invoking the power of heavenly forces to achieve one's goal. Next is the secret of spiritualism and how you might connect with spirits and entities to gain power. The 6th chapter goes back to spiritual guidance, discussing human virtues and the value of ethics. And the book ends with a brief history of ancient magic and the wisdom of philosophers whose names are long forgotten. So, what do you think? Is this a book you might be interested in reading? Let us know in the comments. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe. King Tut's Secret Chambers. It's been 101 years since King Tut's tomb was found in 1922. The burial chamber has been photographed, picked apart, and more meticulously studied than just about any other tomb in the world. Yet its secrets remain hidden. It's believed there might be a secret chamber somewhere in the tomb, hidden behind a stone wall that contains the lost mummy of Queen Nefertiti. In 2016, a group of scientists used ground-penetrating radar to breach the terrain surrounding the tomb. The initial scan suggested that there might be organic material and metal hidden on the other side of the tomb's walls. However, in 2018, famed Egyptologist Zahi Hawass led his own radar analysis that dismissed the previous claims. He came out and said that there were no hidden rooms and nothing else to find in King Tut's burial chamber. It was a sad end to an epic archaeological mystery. But what if he was wrong? Zahi Hawass has been notorious for dismissing all fringe theories surrounding ancient Egypt's most famous figures. Whenever something mysterious or unusual crops up, this guy is one of the first ones to call it nonsense. His dismissal in 2018 was really weird because prior to his announcement, archaeologists agreed that there was a 90% chance of a new chamber. Other legitimate researchers were convinced that on the other side of Tut's tomb was a secondary tomb containing the legendary Nefertiti. She was the wife of Tutankhamun's father, Akhenaten. It's believed that Nefertiti ruled alongside her husband, then took over the throne after his death until 1330 BC. Tektites. A tektite is a form of natural glass that can only be created under extremely intense circumstances. It takes a lot of power and a lot of heat to create a tektite. Something like an extraterrestrial impact will do it. The force and heat of an interstellar object smashing into the sand of the desert can easily form tektites. And so too can nuclear impacts. When the first atomic bomb was detonated in New Mexico in 1945, the desert sand was transformed into millions of tiny glass fragments. Some of the scientists involved in the project were shocked that the glass fragments looked identical to tektites, especially since tektites have been discovered across the globe for centuries. There isn't any single place where more have been found. Tektites have been collected pretty much everywhere, from Tasmania to Africa and even in the Philippines. Amazingly, many of them are about 700,000 years old. Like I said earlier, tektites can be made from meteorite impacts. But what if, and this might be crazy, all the tektites were made from nuclear weapons like the ones formed in 1945? There are some historians that believe there could have been an ancient advanced civilization on Earth that was destroyed in a nuclear war. Then humanity had to start all over again. Seeing as so many of these pieces of glass are from 700,000 years ago, it might stand to reason that they were all made during the same event. The theory is that long before Homo sapiens ever evolved, there was an advanced civilization on this planet who blew themselves to bits using nuclear weapons. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Tarzo civilization slaughter. Human bones have been discovered at the archaeological site of a pre-Roman civilization in the southwest of Spain. Located in Badajoz, experts say it could shed some light on the extremely mysterious civilization. In fact, chances are you may not have heard of them before. They are called the Tarzo civilization, and they flourished around 2,500 years ago. They also had a complete and abrupt collapse of their society that left barely any trace of them remaining. Between the 9th and 5th century BC, the Tarzo civilization was rich and sophisticated. Even Greek historians were impressed by how gracefully the society functioned. There is even a Greek myth that says Hercules once visited their glorious kingdom. They became rich by trading with the Greeks and the Phoenicians, but after 500 years of prosperity, the civilization abruptly declined. Scientists believe it may have been caused by an epidemic, climate change, or invading Celtic tribes. As for the human remains discovered at the new site, they were located inside of an old building that dates back to the height of the Tarzo civilization. What's really fascinating is that the structure appears to have been built with a type of cement, and this is several hundred years before the Romans ever invented their famous cement technology. The structure was probably some sort of sanctuary that contained a treasure trove of artifacts. Around 30 skeletons of animals have been uncovered so far that look like they were sacrificed before the building was set on fire and then buried, maybe as some sort of ritual. The fire and ash help to preserve everything for us now. Archaeologists found human bones on the first floor and were quite surprised since the Tartessians usually cremated their dead. Experts are hoping that the unique burial and building here will tell us more about this lost advanced society. Largest energy beam. Scientists in 2021 made one of the most incredible discoveries out in the universe. Scientists have been puzzling over powerful beams of light energy that flash from time to time inside of our galaxy, usually inside of a random hotspot. Nobody has been able to figure out what these bursts of light are, other than, of course, pure energy. We simply don't know how they function or what creates them. However, scientists working with the LASSO, also known as the High Altitude Aerial Telescope, just detected the largest beam of light energy in recorded history. How large was it? Scientists say it boasted about 1.4 quadrillion volts. If that sounds like a lot, that's because it is. Most things in your house only need a 12-volt plug-in to charge. What the discovery of the energy beam suggests is that inside the Milky Way there are particle accelerators that push electrons and protons to blistering speeds, creating intense energy beams. However, the discovery has not shed any light on what causes the reaction or what the energy beams can do. But there should be more discoveries coming soon, as the LASSO becomes fully operational by the end of 2021. And who knows? Maybe scientists will figure out how to make their own 1.4 quadrillion volt energy beam. That's a scary thought. Jewelry from space. The Hopewell culture flourished in the Midwestern United States from between 200 BC and 500 AD. This was a widely distributed society connected by a network of trade routes who lived in multiple cities. There are several remaining artifacts left over by the Hopewell culture, though many of their ancient cities have been lost. Scientists know that they made impressive relics from copper and silver. However, A new discovery made by a team of scientists shows that the Hopewell culture also manufactured jewelry from outer space. These people made very impressive pieces using iron extracted from meteorites. Beads were found inside of a burial mound in Illinois back in 1945. More recently, thanks to modern technology, scientists were able to take a closer look and found that they were made from meteorites. The iron taken from the meteorites to build these beads cannot be found anywhere else on Earth, literally. Because of this, scientists believe that the Hopewell treated these objects as extremely precious, although it's hard to know for sure just what type of meaning they attached to it. The truth is that many ancient cultures viewed falling meteorites as religious symbols that should be worshipped. This includes other ancient cultures like the Egyptians. There was even a gem found in Tutankhamun's tomb on his jewelry that came from an enormous blast caused when a meteor struck. Thousands of years before Egypt's Iron Age, people were stringing together beads made from iron meteorites. The Inuit people also worked with this material. Researchers decided to try to find what meteorite the beads came from. They determined that it came from the Anoka meteorite, which solves a partial piece of the puzzle, but many questions still remain. Gold bars in stomach. A team of surgeons recently made a shocking and incredible discovery inside of a man's stomach. It all happened when a team of Indian surgeons opened up a patient, a man who had been complaining of abdominal pain, only to discover a literal fortune. The man's name was never released for safety reasons, though CNN confirmed that he had been hiding 12 bars of gold in his stomach. The patient was 66 years old and visited the hospital after complaining of agonizing stomach cramps and extreme nausea. He told doctors that he accidentally swallowed the cap from a plastic bottle. Nope. He had apparently smuggled the gold bars into the country to avoid paying the import tax. Each bar of gold weighed an astonishing 33 grams, according to the doctor who conducted the surgery at the New Delhi hospital. On the day of the surgery, the metal bars were pulled out of his stomach. But this guy's plan didn't turn out very well in the end, as the hospital staff handed over his precious metals to the authorities, and it's now expected that he will have to pay that 10% tax on his goods. Either that, or he may just never get them back from the police as they stay in evidence for the next 45 years. Not really worth it. Illegal Roman shipwreck artifacts. Spanish authorities were doing a routine inspection of a seafood store when they came across an incredible discovery. They found several historical artifacts dating all the way back to the ancient Roman Empire. They found storage containers that came from a Roman shipwreck known as amphorae. While inspectors were going through the shop in Santa Pola, they saw the containers and realized they were obviously very old. For whatever reason, they thought the artifacts in the fish shop were suspicious, and so they contacted the proper authorities. The regional cultural department then moved in and confiscated what they would later find out to be genuine shipwreck artifacts. In total, 13 ceramic containers were found dating back to the 1st century AD. All of them were in almost perfect condition. Since their discovery, they've been transferred to the Santa Pola Museum. But just how exactly did these fishmongers get their hands on such precious goods? It turns out that the items may have actually come from 2 separate shipwrecks. It's likely that the fish shop owners had hauled them out of the water themselves, seeing as there are literally dozens upon dozens of shipwrecks along the coast of Spain and the Mediterranean, many of them dating back to the Bronze Age. Since getting busted, 2 men in charge of the shop are now being investigated for crimes against historical heritage. The thing is that it's a crime to possess historical objects of significance without reporting them, and it's definitely a crime to loot a shipwreck. Higgs boson decay. In 2012, there was a scientific breakthrough that rocked the world of physics. The Higgs boson, also known as the God particle, was finally found. This subatomic particle was predicted 50 years before its discovery. It's what basically gives every single thing in the physical universe mass. But in a new study by researchers at the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, it turns out that the Higgs boson doesn't live very long and quickly decays into smaller particles, such as photons. Photons, of course, being the particles that make up light. Research has shown that the legendary God particle decays into a single photon and 2 leptons. Lepton particles are strange, as they can be either charged or neutral. 2 examples of charged leptons are electrons and muons, both subatomic particles. What's even more fascinating is that research showed that the Higgs boson can also decay slightly differently. reverting into a single photon and a pair of muons with opposite charge. It's all very strange and extremely abstract. But these are the first steps to humans understanding the quantum universe. Researchers at the Large Hadron Collider say that it's incredible discoveries like these that get us closer to understanding things like gravity and dark matter, and stretching our human knowledge beyond what physicists refer to as the Standard Model, which explains everything we currently know about how our physical universe works. Ancient fossil. A pair of paddleboarders were enjoying a day out on the water when they discovered something incredible. They found a piece of fossilized coral that has since been confirmed at over 300 million years old. These guys had just been trying to soak in some sun and clean up their local river, an activity known as rubbish paddling, when they made the bizarre discovery in Scotland. Amazingly, one of the paddlers happened to be a geologist, and he spotted the fossil right away. But it wasn't until later that they discovered just how old the fossil truly was. It comes from a time when Scotland was actually closer to the equator and populated by tropical beaches and vibrant, colorful corals, a time known as the Carboniferous period. This fossil isn't exactly rare, knowing Scotland's prehistory. It is likely a type of extinct horned coral, and there are plenty of those fossils to be found through the lochs and rivers of the country. This one was found in Knockline Gorge, right on the rocky banks of the Ayr River where anyone could see it. The ugliest orchid. The ugliest orchid in the entire world was making headlines back in 2020 as one of the most incredible discoveries of the year. Orchids are flowers that are typically seen as pretty. They come in all different colors, they smell great, and they are often seen as a symbol of purity. But this new species of orchid is positively hideous and may even be one of the ugliest flowers in the world. It almost looks like a rotten flower that's come down with some kind of disease or flesh-eating bacteria. Even more fascinating is that the ugly orchid was only one of a handful of amazing plants and fungi recently discovered and documented. Scientists found 6 new species of toadstools near Heathrow Airport in London. 3 additional toadstools were found in Scotland, and 19 new orchids were discovered in New Guinea. In 2020 alone, scientists at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew named and published the scientific details of approximately 156 species. But as reported by the BBC, there are about 2,000 new plants and fungi being discovered each and every year. Many of them aren't even found in places where you might expect, like the Amazon. For example, many new flowers and fungi are found all throughout the United States and the UK. It's usually the weirder ones that are found in remote jungles. The ugliest orchid in the world was actually found hiding inside a forest in Madagascar, where researchers also discovered 2 new types of aloe. Viking Helmet. True Viking helmets are some of the rarest artifacts coveted by archaeologists. This is because in the 10th century, back when Scandinavians and Saxons both began converting to Christianity, they both stopped being buried with their helmets on. The only reason helmets are preserved for upwards of thousands of years is because of the mud in which they are buried. This is what makes the discovery of the second, almost complete Viking helmet so amazing. The helmet was dug up by workers back in the 1950s in England and put on display at a Yorkshire museum. But it wasn't until recently that a new study in medieval archaeology confirmed it to be one of the rarest examples of Viking armor in the world. We often see depictions of Vikings wearing helmets with horns, but this never actually happened. That style was created by an opera costume designer in the 19th century. Genuine Viking helmets look pretty much like other helmets from England or Greece or France, but a little different. This helmet was made of iron bands and plates fixed together with rivets. This style is known as the Spangenhelm, and it was popular all throughout medieval Europe. Other than this mostly intact Viking helmet, the only other one to have been found in modern history was in Norway. Unknown galactic forces. A new and very incredible discovery may be changing how we understand the composition of the universe, at least according to Associate Professor Steen Harl Hansen from the Niels Bohr Institute's Dark Cosmology Center. Steen made a new computer model to replace dark energy, what is widely believed to be a mysterious force pushing the universe apart, causing it to perpetually expand, with dark matter in the form of magnetic forces. In other words, Steen has been trying to understand why dark matter allows the universe to expand at a seemingly exponential rate and thought maybe there could be magnetic forces at work. One of the popular theories prior to this study was that dark energy, different from dark matter, takes up 70% of our universe but cannot be measured. Scientists don't know where it comes from, and they don't understand how its energy works. By replacing dark energy with magnetic forces, Steen may have disproved the existence of dark energy at all, seeing as all the math states that the universe would expand at the exact same rate simply by the magnetic forces pushing everything ever outwards. Of course, it's all wildly more complicated than this. The main thing you need to know is that dark energy, the thing that supposedly makes up 70% of our universe, may just be magnetism. Dark energy might not even exist.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Göbekli Tepe. The temple complex of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is a prehistoric marvel of humanity. This sacred place was constructed 11,500 years ago by hunter-gatherers in what could be the first temple and religious center used by humans anywhere on the planet. To give you an idea of how significant it is, Göbekli Tepe was erected 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and new discoveries at the site are changing the way we view the rise of civilization. The megaliths here were built and arranged by prehistoric people that did not yet have metal tools or even pottery. Thanks to new research, it seems that the ancient humans who built Göbekli Tepe may have been inspired by geometry. Researchers are saying they found proof that the impressive stone structures and the huge limestone pillars were pre-planned before development, which would mean that this could be the very first instance of humans using geometry to build a great structure, as well as the first example of a planned temple complex. There are many pits surrounded by standing stones or pillars arranged in circles. Each circle has a similar layout with two large stone T-shaped pillars with smaller stones facing inward. The tallest pillars are 16 feet high, weighing between 7 and 10 tons. Some carved out sections of rock are called portals, and this unusual double portal has carvings of wild cattle, a boar, and some type of predator. Around the site, some of the stones are plain, while others are full of carvings of all kinds of animals like foxes, lions, scorpions, and birds. There is no evidence of housing or farming in the area, so how were hunter-gatherers able to build something so complex? Researchers used an algorithm based on standard deviation mapping to identify an underlying geometric pattern that regulated the design. Geometry and floor plans are believed to have emerged much later than when Göbekli Tepe was built, after hunter-gatherers became farmers. But this place is proof that architectural planning, abstract design rules, and organizational patterns were already being used before farmers started making their fields into rectangles. Christopher Columbus and syphilis. Archaeologists have made a rather disturbing discovery about the famous explorer Christopher Columbus. As most of us already know, the Italian explorer was the first to venture across the Atlantic Ocean on an official expedition and discover North America for Europe, paving the way for more European explorers and the eventual colonization of the Americas and the utter destruction of its natives. And while a lot of people know that when the first settlers came to America, they brought with them nasty diseases that infected local population, such as smallpox, what a lot of people don't know is that Christopher Columbus and his crew were also blamed for bringing this sexually transmitted infection called syphilis from America back to Europe. That's right, the sharing of diseases was kind of reciprocal. At least that's what historians thought until now. Syphilis devastated Europe beginning in the late 15th century, right around the same time Columbus returned to Europe. It's an easily curable disease now, but for 20 years following Christopher Columbus's return, millions of people were ravaged and killed by syphilis. Archaeologists recently investigated 9 skeletons from Finland, Estonia, and the Netherlands that predate Christopher Columbus. They found inside of their bones traces of the bacteria which causes syphilis, suggesting the disease may have already been in Europe and that Christopher Columbus was blamed for no reason at all. Researchers from the University of Zurich are now saying it wasn't Christopher Columbus's fault, and that syphilis may have already been in Europe, and its outbreak at the time of Columbus returning from his adventure was just a big coincidence. West African technologies. The human species, also known as Homo sapiens, rose out of Africa roughly 300,000 years ago. Then, according to the official narrative, about 40,000 years ago, the Middle Stone Age began. This marked the end of the longest human culture, primitive cave people, and the beginning of the era of technology. 40,000 years ago, humans started making things, all kinds of things. Clothing, tools, storage for water, personal decorations, bows and arrows, you know what I mean. But something that has boggled archaeologists and anthropologists for a long time is just how the Middle Stone Age ended. Meaning, how did we get over the Stone Age and move into the more complex stages of mastering iron and copper? The answer may lie in West Africa. Recent archaeological work in Senegal has led to the discovery of a mysterious site in the north of the country, where the Middle Stone Age ended much more recently than in other parts of the world. The site has been dated back around 12,000 years. The people here never developed beyond the Middle Stone Age, which is confusing because most other places were already heavily advanced by this time. Evidence from Senegal suggests climate change could be the reason for the slow evolution. Because this area of West Africa never saw such a harsh change in climate as the Ice Age ended, like other places around the world, it created stability. This stability meant the people didn't have any need to change or evolve. What this suggests is that the only reason humans managed to push their way into the age of technology is that they had to. Necessity is the mother of invention, and as the world changed around them, they had no choice but to evolve and learn to survive. Viking Settlement. Archaeologists may have just discovered a Viking settlement in North America. A team of researchers from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, along with several other archaeologists, believe they have found evidence of a second Viking site in the Western Hemisphere. If proved correct, it would be the first Viking settlement found in over 50 years. The discovery was made thanks to satellite image analysis and a handful of preliminary excavations. This happened at Point Rose in Newfoundland, Canada. Oddly enough, the first Viking settlement, which has been proven real for decades, is also located in Newfoundland. The first Viking site is called Lands aux Meadows. The buildings here date back 1,000 years, way before Christopher Columbus ever arrived to the Caribbean and the British to the east coast of North America. If this newest site is proven legit, it will prove that the Vikings may have actually spread out across Newfoundland, trying to set up some kind of larger, more permanent site. Had they succeeded, Canada may have been heavily populated by Vikings way before anyone else showed up. Richard III. A team of researchers from the University of Leicester have made a pretty weird discovery involving King Richard III of England. According to the research team, they discovered a skeleton with battle wounds and an unnatural curvature of the spine in a parking lot. They believe the skeleton is that of the dead monarch. If true, the discovery could rewrite a rather tumultuous period of English history. In the history books, Richard III was a despised king whose body was thrown into a random river after being defeated by Henry Tudor during the War of the Roses. The legend propagated at the time was that his own people disliked him so much that they just tossed him away and forgot about him. But the rumors that he was deformed and evil were propagated by the winners of the day, and the truth is much more likely that the killed king was buried quietly in a church without much fanfare. After digging through many historical records, the location of the lost king's remains were still a mystery, but based on some evidence, researchers decided to dig up a parking lot to look for him, and actually found remains on the property of the Greyfriars Church in Leicester. Much of the older church had been destroyed over the years, and the burials inside had been covered by an empty lot. But underneath were hidden secrets, and all this could mean the king was never tossed into a river at all. Archaeologists are fairly certain the body is his. They still need to do more tests to find out, but all clues point to it being that of Richard III. The fact that he was given a proper burial, albeit a pretty sloppy one, could go to show that many of the rumors surrounding Richard are false. The team said that even though Richard has been portrayed as a villain, he was probably just an ordinary man who fought in battles and tried to do what he thought was right. The thing is that he lost. Roman sword in Canada. A Roman sword was discovered on Oak Island in Canada, and nobody knows why. Oak Island is a small piece of land just off the coast of mainland Nova Scotia, shrouded in mystery. You may know it from the lost treasures and curses rumored to surround the place. Unsurprisingly, if you travel straight across the ocean, the next piece of land you hit happens to be Ireland. This is why Newfoundland, slightly above Nova Scotia, is known to have the first and only Viking settlement anywhere in the Americas. The Vikings touched down by accident, probably thanks to a current. Nobody expected a Roman weapon to be found here. It's one thing if the seafaring Vikings accidentally made it to North America, But if there were to be concrete evidence that the Romans were the first Europeans to reach the New World, well, it truly would change the history books. So how was the Roman sword discovered? It was found by two brothers just off the coast of Oak Island in what they say is a shipwreck. The ceremonial sword was allegedly taken from the wreckage. Unfortunately, it's proven hard to properly authenticate where the sword came from or how it got to Canada. It's been dated back to around the year 190 AD and may have been a kind of ritual votive sword used by a Roman. However, it's hard to believe that an actual Roman brought it to the island. Perhaps it was brought over through trade or placed there on purpose. In any case, unless any other Roman artifacts are found, it is hard to say what happened. The early Americans. A controversial new discovery in Mexico could change how we look at the history of human beings in the Americas. The way it goes in the history books is that 13,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers walked across the ice corridor that connects Asia to North America. They became the first people to ever walk on this part of the planet. These people then migrated south and spread to all corners of North America, over thousands of years, developing their own distinct cultures. These people were known as the Clovis, and they were believed to be a single culture that dominated North America. But according to archaeologists affiliated with the University of Zacatecas in Mexico, people entered North America up to 33,000 years ago, almost doubling the previously accepted narrative. But how could this be possible? The archaeologists actually made a pretty good case. They studied 42 archaeological sites throughout North America and Beringia. Beringia is the area between Russia and Canada where the Bering Land Bridge once stood, and they found evidence that people have been trickling very slowly into North America for a long time. Many artifacts from many places date back further than 13,000 years, and the migration wasn't something that happened all at once, but rather over a period of at least 23,000 years. Long-lost Egyptian queen. The famous necropolis of Saqqara in Egypt is revealing more and more secrets every year. Each discovery made has the potential to change history. The Saqqara necropolis, located near the Egyptian capital of Cairo, has been the source of great discovery in the past handful of years, with more and more history-changing finds being uncovered. Most recently, archaeologists have found the abandoned temple of the Egyptian queen Nate, wife of King Teti. But why is her tomb so important? She was a long-lost queen that no one was even looking for. Until now, archaeologists didn't even know who she was. She's a new and powerful queen in the lore and history of ancient Egypt, even though historians already knew about her husband, King Teti, who was the first king of the 6th dynasty, which lasted between 2323 BC and 2150 BC. But they had no idea about his powerful wife, which is surprising given that she was also buried in a magnificent chamber. Along with dozens of mummies and coffins, archaeologists also unearthed papyrus scrolls full of what looked like spells or prayers. They were magical incantations that Egyptian priests would use to help direct the dead on their way to the afterlife. The team of archaeologists excavating the site has also found so much more. They discovered ancient games, funerary masks, statues and figurines, a miniature boat, and a total of about 54 colorfully decorated coffins. Archaeologists have only excavated 30% of the tomb so far, so there still isn't a lot of information about this mysterious woman, but in the days to come, they are sure to find out more. New type of human. A dramatic discovery has been made in Israel regarding our ancient ancestors. The bones of a very early human previously unknown to science have been uncovered near the small city of Ramla. It happened just this year, 2021, with the human bones dating back about 130,000 years. There are plenty of Homo species known to science, with the oldest dating back 400,000 years, and then some even more ancient species of hominin-type creatures dating back 3 million, though these aren't of the Homo species. The reason this discovery is so interesting isn't because of how young the species is, but because of how weird it is. According to Science Daily, researchers believe this new type of human could replace the Neanderthal as our closest relative. And yet, despite this, the creature in life looked nothing like we do. Based on its skull, it was kind of hideous. The ancient human had no chin, its eye sockets were square instead of round, and it had great big teeth completely unlike our own. Scientists have no idea what to do with this new fossil or where to put it in our confusing family tree, but it's definitely going to change history. Dragon bones. The history of dragon bones in China is a curious one. In the year 1899, the Chancellor of the Imperial Academy, Wang Yirong, got sick with malaria. He went to his local apothecary looking for a cure. The medicine man there sold him a very expensive and very popular remedy: dragon bones. They were said to come from real dragons and would cure his malaria if he crushed them up into powder and drank them. But Wang noticed after taking the bones home that they were covered in ancient Chinese symbols. They were very small and hard to see, but they were definitely there. He decided not to drink the bones and keep them. After he eventually got a little bit better, he went back to find out more information about the dragon bones. His investigation ended in the year 1900 when he died, probably from malaria. But another scholar named Luo Zhenyu finally found the source of the dragon bones 9 years later, outside the small city of Anyang. There were thousands of them, and local farmers told him that the bones were often dug up by people who would sell them as fake dragon bones at apothecaries. The truth is that the bones were actually ox bones used to tell the future by ancient oracles. They were magical, just not in the way the locals thought. Archaeologists flocked to the small town of Anyang and began collecting these ancient oracle bones covered in carvings. Oracles had used the bones to try and predict the future. And to do this, they wrote the date of the question asked, the name of the person asking the question, what the question was, and the results of their prophecy. This gave historians a unique look into the past and changed the way they saw ancient Chinese society. The oracle bones are a window that allows us to look into the past as they were trying to predict the future.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
The Serapeum of Saqqara. The Serapeum of Saqqara is a mysterious underground necropolis home to hundreds and hundreds of tombs dating back thousands of years. The underground necropolis is filled with tunnels snaking beneath the desert sands, and every year reveals more and more secrets. These tunnels are close to being directly underneath the Djoser Pyramid, considered to be one of the oldest pyramids in all of Egypt. Just recently, archaeologists unearthed a 4,400-year-old tomb and many mummified animals. One of the most intriguing discoveries from the Serapeum of Saqqara is an area known as the Great Vault. It's a passage 382 yards long and carved right out of the sandstone bedrock. The passage contains doorways to 24 side chambers, each of which contains a huge sarcophagus carved from a single block of black Aswan granite. Most ancient burials here date back to the 18th dynasty during the 1350s BC, when Amenhotep III still reigned supreme. The imposing black granite sarcophagi are believed to be the resting place for enormous Apis bulls. Apis bulls were considered to be divine animals and manifestations of the Egyptian god Ptah. Each granite sarcophagus weighs almost 78 tons, and they are much larger than the bulls themselves. How did they make these enormous heavy coffins and carry them down into the chambers? What if they were not made for bulls, but for something else? Dr. Konstantin Borisov, writing for Ancient Origins, proposes a completely different theory. He says that these giant black stone slabs were for a different purpose entirely. They were made to seal completely to be able to ferment things. He says the granite boxes are made with high precision and have a tolerance within 1 micron, so closing the lid essentially makes them hermetically sealed. This would allow gases to build up enough pressure, and CO2 gas, that combined with the quartz crystals in the granite would actually create an electric charge. It would have created luminescence and brought light into the dark underground. Dr. Borisov knows what he's talking about. He has studied and worked all over the world in design and development for high-energy systems, as well as electrical engineering. This many granite coffins building up an electric charge underground would have ionized the air above Saqqara and caused the air to glow. What do you think about this incredible theory? Is it possible? Let me know in the comments below. Dark matter. Scientists have been trying to figure out dark matter for years. A new group of scientists has made some recent advancements, though they still can't fully wrap their minds around this strange substance, never mind prove its existence. According to the New York Post, scientists linked the presence of macroscopic dark matter with the extremely rare appearance of straight bolts of lightning. Researchers say that pieces of dark matter speeding through the atmosphere can create a straight channel of ionized plasma. This would force a lightning bolt to seem straight rather than jagged. In layman's terms, The presence of dark matter during a lightning storm may cause lightning to shoot straight and rigid rather than forked and spiky. Despite this new discovery, it's still impossible for scientists to prove the existence of dark matter. Dark matter is allegedly matter not in the form of something visible to the human eye. This means that dark matter is basically matter in the space between the things that we can see, as confusing as that sounds. And it's not to be confused with dark energy, which is something completely different and equally as unexplainable. NASA says the universe is a combination of 68% dark energy, 27% dark matter, and 5% regular matter. And now for number 7, but first want to give a big shout out to Officially Tonito and Coda Suggs. Thanks so much for supporting this channel, and we are happy to be a part of your day. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Origins Explained family. An ancient ambush. In what is today Sicily, there was a series of battles starting in 480 BC, known as the Battles of Himera. It began with Greek soldiers fighting back an invading army from Carthage across the sea. The Greeks at first succeeded in warding off the invaders, but eventually Carthage attacked in full force and Himera fell, beating the Greeks out of Sicily. New research done by a team of scientists from the University of Georgia has shed some interesting light on what really happened in Himera over 2,000 years ago. They analyzed the chemical composition from teeth found at the site of the battle, the teeth from 62 soldiers to be exact. Chemical composition showed that at least 3/4 of the soldiers who fought in the final battle were locals. What's really shocking about this is that it suggests something happened right out of Game of Thrones. It seems that the Carthaginians may have purchased local mercenaries to fight on their side, thereby beating the Greeks using their own citizens against them. It was an old-fashioned double cross, and one of the most ancient that has ever been shown with physical evidence. Though, of course, scientists don't really know 100% what happened. All the information they have to work with is literally inside a bunch of teeth. Utah skeleton. A strange skeleton was found in someone's backyard in Utah, and scientists made quite a big mistake. The skeleton is that of a wild female horse that was buried a very long time ago. At first, experts claimed the horse came from 16,000 years ago, during the last ice age. An ice age horse in your backyard? But new information sort of changed the whole theory. It turns out the horse was actually only buried around 340 years ago. That is an enormous discrepancy. I mean, still old for the United States, but still. The bones were first found by landscapers in 2018. It made sense that the horse was from 16,000 years ago, since wild horses lived all over North America from between 50 million years ago to as recently as 10,000 years ago. They vanished from the continent about the same time that the mammoths, direwolves, and giant sloths did. It wasn't until scientists actually analyzed the horse remains that they found it to be domestic, coming from the days when the Spanish first introduced European horses in the 16th century. It died at the ripe old age of 12 and was buried in a pit, where it stayed for over 300 years. Secret particles. There is a tiny particle that could change everything we know about the laws of physics. It all began with experiments in which scientists played with particles known as muons. These experiments have suggested there are unknown forms of matter and energy critical to the nature of the universe. Many of these experiments were done at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory. Evidence has shown that there could be small particles, subatomic, that don't obey the laws of physics. Physicists are now saying that when they finally discover these elusive and unknown particles, it will be a bigger discovery than when they found the Higgs boson God particle back in 2012. The muon particle is like an electron, only heavier. It's also an important element in the cosmos. When they shot muons through an intense magnetic field at the lab, they did not respond in line with the rules of physics, suggesting there is something else that scientists haven't yet discovered interacting with these specific particles that allows them to react abnormally. In other words, there could be an entire world of subatomic particles that we haven't identified and that are around us at all times, and these particles don't have to obey the laws of physics. The consequence of these subatomic particles could be earth-shattering, but of course, scientists still need to identify them first. El Fuerte de Samaipata. El Fuerte de Samaipata is a mysterious archaeological site in Bolivia, located in the Florida province. This site is at the foothills of the Bolivian Andes, and some claim it was used as a meeting place between the ancient indigenous people and extraterrestrial visitors. It was constructed by the Chane civilization, who began building it as the Inca were expanding farther to the south. But after the great structure was built, the Chane began suffering raids from the brutal Guarani warriors who were also attacking the Inca. Over time, the Guarani conquered the plains and valleys of what is today the Florida province and ultimately destroyed much of Samaipata. The Guarani essentially erased a lot of the history of this ancient site, and they continue to dominate the region even after the Spanish colonials arrived. But here's where the mystery of the extraterrestrial meetings comes into play. There are two parallel lines at the top of the ancient structure that look like they could have been used as some kind of landing strip. The parallel lines also happen to point directly to two planets, Venus and Jupiter, when they rise against the constellation Leo. It is, of course, much more reasonable to give the Chane credit that they had a very solid knowledge of the cosmos and were most likely greatly inspired by the heavens in their daily life. But as always, many people have trouble believing that an ancient culture would be able to make an exceptional structure with such precision. El Fuerte de Samaipata really does look like a prehistoric landing zone. The top of the structure is completely flat, as if a craft could land on it, and the two parallel lines may very well have been used for takeoff. Moon mass. Scientists can't seem to explain a huge mass of unidentified material discovered on the moon. The strange lump of material was found inside a crater on the dark side of the moon, called the Lunar South Pole Aitken Basin. It's about 1,500 miles in diameter, taking up a huge portion of the moon's surface. You just can't see it because it's on the other side. Nobody's really sure what the mass of material is. Some researchers have predicted that it could contain metal from an asteroid that smacked into the surface of the moon sometime around 4 billion years ago. The lead author of this newest study, Dr. Peter James, said that there is a piece of metal about 5 times larger than the big island of Hawaii underground on the moon. At least that's about how much mass they detected. The mass is so heavy that it seems to be weighing down the basin floor. It was only discovered and analyzed thanks to spacecraft used in the Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory mission from NASA. Until someone actually lands on the lunar surface to investigate, scientists probably won't know what the secret mass is hiding underneath the moon's surface. Could it actually be an alien base? Is it really just a hunk of asteroid metal? Scientists don't know the answers. Quasicrystal. Scientists discovered something known as a quasicrystal that formed because of the first nuclear bomb detonated in 1945. This first nuclear explosion was part of the Trinity test, and it happened over 75 years ago. Nonetheless, researchers have only recently discovered the rare, never-before-seen matter it created. But let's back up a bit. Quasicrystals were thought to be impossible. According to Terry Wallace from the Los Alamos National Laboratory, quasicrystals are formed only in the most extreme environments, and these environments don't really exist on Earth. They can only form during a traumatic event that includes high temperature and incredible pressure. Of course, a nuclear explosion is perfect. When the United States detonated a nuclear bomb equivalent to 21 kilotons of TNT, the event was dramatic enough to create the very rare matter. The bomb fused copper with asphalt in the desert sand, creating a strange glass-like mineral known as trinitite. Just recently, scientists discovered quasicrystal inside a piece of that trinitite. However, scientists don't really know what to make of it. The atoms inside the quasicrystal don't work the way they should. They can't even figure out why it was formed in the way that it was. The only other quasicrystals have been found in meteorites or made in labs. Still, it must be important. We just need to figure out why and how. Thanks for watching! What are your thoughts on these unsolved discoveries? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!